kadang sampai pakai kaki, sampai ditendang, enggak, paling gini di badan itu.
Selama masih bisa berdiri dan kerja itu ya harus kerja.
Saya mau jatuh ke laut saya.
South Korea has one of the world's largest distant water fishing fleets, supplying high-value seafood to markets in Europe, the USA, Japan, and across the world. In the last decade, there has been significant focus on illegal fishing by these vessels, from fishing inside restricted areas to killing protected species. And despite the Korean government making reforms designed to stamp out the practice in response to multiple warnings from the EU and the USA, widespread allegations of illegal fishing remain. But alongside these serious environmental issues are frequent reports of severe human rights abuses suffered by migrant workers. More than 65% of the crew are migrants, and 2/3 of these are from Indonesia. Over recent years, the Environmental Justice Foundation, together with advocates for public interest law, have worked to gather testimony from these workers. EJF's investigators have conducted interviews with 54 Indonesian crew members who worked on 41 different Korean fishing vessels between them. These interviews revealed a shocking prevalence of human rights abuse.
Waktu itu kan yang pegang kapten semua, paspor, PST, apa segala macam lah. Ya di kapten semua. Takutnya kalau di saya kan kabur takutnya.
Tiap pekerjaan salah atau apa kan pasti kena gitu. Intinya sih pekerjaan salah, apalagi yang salah fatal gitu.
Kaptennya ya langsung pukul 4 kali di muka.
2/3 of crew members reported experiencing verbal abuse, while a quarter alleged that they were physically abused by Korean crew.
Dipukul pakai batu itu ya nyampe kepalanya pinjul. Iya yang buat itu. Ya berarti bobotnya itu 2 kiloan. Pokoknya sakit sekali saya.
Ya kadang main kasar gitu, main kasar. Terus kayak kita kan orang Indo takut, salah satu faktor takut. Kita nggak bisa melawan gitu kan ya, karena kita terkait kontrak kerja, kayak takut dipulangin atau dipotong gaji dipotong atau gimana kan.
This fear of dismissal without pay was exacerbated for workers who had borrowed money for travel or documentation to join the crew and were already in debt. Brokers are reported to exploit, deceive, or pressure workers into signing unreasonable contracts that restrict their freedom of movement, charge extortionate fees, deduct wages, and make threats against workers or their families. This unregulated system of recruitment is what ties the workers to the vessel. Vulnerable migrant workers are put to even greater risk of maltreatment and abuse when vessels remain at sea for long periods without returning to port, a practice which enables them to avoid scrutiny by Korean officials and overseas port states. Korean distant water fishing vessels rank top in the world for distance travelled, as well as fishing hours. 96% of those interviewed worked more than 12 hours a day, and 57% worked more than 18 hours. 1 in 4 worked 20 hours a day or more. In the most serious cases, crew were forced to work for 2 days without sleep.
Ya kerja sih, kalau normalnya itu biasanya itu. Nah yang 4 jamnya disuruh tidur.
Paling untuk 2 hari 2 malam, paling banyak dikasih tidur itu 3,5 jam.
Testimonies from crew members further allege widespread passport confiscations, withholding of wages, and wage discrimination. And numerous workers claim they were forced to kill protected species, such as walruses, seals, and dolphins, as well as regularly fish inside restricted areas. There is a unique lack of transparency in the global fishing sector. To stamp out illegal fishing and human rights abuses, it is critical that the Korean seafood industry and the international companies that buy from it play a role in bringing these vessels out of the shadows. In early 2021, the Korean government introduced some basic new rules, setting new minimum standards for contracts, minimum rest and pay, and measures to prevent bonded labour. But there are limited mechanisms for enforcement, with industry left to monitor compliance. So Korean seafood companies must now act quickly and work with the Korean government to ensure full compliance, and support urgent efforts to bring the law in line with international best practice. Alongside this, industry should support the introduction of electronic monitoring to ensure illegal fishing is stamped out once and for all. Korean seafood companies and those that buy from them should introduce robust due diligence systems that make sure slave-caught illegal seafood is not reaching consumers.